My name is Sara Newell. I'm 34 years old, and I found out my marriage was over from a hospital bed, watching the noon news with the sound off. On screen, boarding a luxury cruise liner at Port Miami, were my parents, my sister, and my husband, laughing in a linen shirt I had ironed myself. I was 31 weeks pregnant, hooked to a blood pressure monitor and feeling something cold slide through me. I checked my phone. There it was. A charge on my credit card, 6 days old. Cruise trip. $3,750. I called my husband. "Where are you?" I asked. "At work," he said calmly. Calmly. I smiled at the ceiling and I whispered, "Enjoy yourself." And right there, with my daughter drumming her heels under my ribs, I made up my mind to end it all. Not my life. My life was just getting started, hiccuping away on the fetal monitor. The lie my life was built on. What I did from that hospital bed over the next 6 weeks, with a laptop, a nurse named Rosa, and 15 years of my family's numbers in my head, is why my father now tells people his own daughter stabbed this family. He's right about one thing. It was surgical. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where family secrets come to light, and quiet women stop being quiet. If you've ever been the one who does the family's paperwork and never gets a seat at the family's table, drop a comment below and be sure to subscribe. Let me back up 5 weeks. I'm a CPA, senior accounting manager at a logistics company in Miami, the person who signs off when the numbers are finally true. I've been married to Derek Voss for 5 years. He's 36, handsome in the way that closes deals, and he works as sales director for my father's company, Newell Marine Group, boat dealership and charter fleet, 12 slips of gleaming white fiberglass off the causeway. That's the shape of it. I married a man who works for my father, which meant, though I didn't do the math until later, that I was the only person at our dinner table whose paycheck didn't run through my dad. We had a good house on Coral Way, a nursery half-painted the yellow of lemon sherbet, and a daughter due in 9 weeks. And I had a second job nobody ever called a job. Every January, for 15 years since I was 19 years old, I tidied the books for Newell Marine Group. Unpaid. Of course unpaid. You don't invoice family. My father would hand me a box of statements and a bookkeeper's summary, pour me the good coffee, and say I was the only one he trusted with the real numbers. I want you to remember that phrase, the real numbers. In my family, January was how I proved my love. In spreadsheets, reconciled to the penny, signed where the preparer signs. I was proud of it. The way you're proud of any language you're fluent in, before you find out what's actually being said. My blood pressure, by the way, was perfect back then. The obstetrician has a chart. You can watch my family happen to it. To understand my father, you need one sentence, and he'll say it for free. Ray Newell, 62, silver hair, handshake like a boat winch, is a self-made man who sells beautiful boats to people who mostly can't afford them, and his gospel, said at showrooms, at christenings, at my wedding, is this: looking poor costs more than being poor. He believes it the way other men believe in God. The Newells were always doing great. The cars said so. The watch said so. The 4th of July party with the raw bar said so. My sister Kayla, 30, was the company's marketing director, a job with no hours I ever witnessed, and my mother Bonnie ran the family's image the way some women run a household. Invitations out, appearances up, questions down. And me? I was the secret weapon. That's what my father called me, his hand warm on my shoulder, in front of exactly the guests he wanted to overhear it. Our secret weapon. For 15 years there was a chair attached to that compliment, the CFO seat, coming to me when we expand, promised at 19, repromised at 24, toasted at 29 in front of a table of dealers. The expansion always came. New slips, new trucks, a bigger party. The chair never did. Titles are for strangers, my father said. Family doesn't need org charts. I saw it. I want to be clear that I saw it. I'm a woman who finds discrepancies for a living, and this one was mine to find. I just kept booking my love where he told me to book it, every January, and carried the difference forward like goodwill. That's the thing about being fluent in a language. You can read every word and still miss what it's for. The hospital part started on a Tuesday in my 31st week. Routine appointment. And then the cuff went around my arm and the nurse's face did the thing nurses' faces do when they've decided not to alarm you. 158/94. Preeclampsia risk, they said. Not an emergency. A watch. And watching, for blood pressure like mine, meant admission. The antepartum unit? A bed by the window, monitors that turned my daughter's heartbeat into a soundtrack, and a whiteboard by the door where each shift wrote my numbers in blue marker. I could work a little from the laptop, walk the hallway twice a day, and otherwise my job was to stay calm and grow a person. Derek brought my pillow from home the first night and stayed 40 minutes. The visits thinned from there. This quarter is insane, babe. Big numbers coming. My mother texted red hearts. My father sent a photo of a sunset from the marina with no words, which for him is intimacy. And that week, the family calendar had an event I'd heard about for a month. The dealer conference in Tampa. All of them going. Dad, Mom, Kayla, Derek. 4 days. Maybe 5. Big accounts. Huge for the company. Rest, my mother told me on the phone. Grow my granddaughter. We'll all be boring in Tampa. I remember feeling grateful. I want to put that on the record because it's the detail I'd change if I could. My family left town to lie to me, and I lay in that bed, feeling grateful they had somewhere important to be. The nurse named Rosa wrote my numbers on the whiteboard and said the baby had a strong heart. Somebody in that room needed one. It was a Thursday, lunch tray untouched, TV murmuring to itself in the corner. The noon news ran a fluff piece. A brand new luxury liner making her maiden voyage out of Port Miami. Champagne, streamers, a reporter in a windbreaker. I was half watching the way you watch anything at all in a hospital, which is to say, like it's weather. And then the camera panned the boarding deck, and the weather became my family. 4 seconds of B-roll. My father, raising a glass to someone off camera, wearing the blazer my mother calls his closing jacket. My mother beside him, laughing with her chin tipped back. Kayla, waving both arms at the camera the way she has since she was 6. And Derek, my husband, in the pale blue linen shirt I had ironed and hung on the closet door before I was admitted, laughing with his head thrown back at something my father said. The reporter said the word unforgettable. The segment ended. A commercial for flooring came on. I sat very still, the way you do when your body knows before your mind files the paperwork. And then, feeling uneasy in a way I could not yet name, I checked my phone. The card alert had come in 6 days earlier. I'd been in a monitoring appointment and swiped it away without reading. Cruise trip. $3,750. My card. Not our joint card. Mine. I called Derek. He picked up on the second ring, easy as a Sunday. Hey babe. Where are you? I asked. A half-beat. The smallest half-beat in the world, the kind only auditors and wives can hear. At work, he said calmly, and I smiled. I actually smiled at the ceiling tiles, and I whispered, "Enjoy yourself," and hung up before he could add a single decorative detail. Rosa came in 2 minutes later to check my pressure, 162. She looked at me. I looked at the ceiling. "I'm going to need my laptop," I said. Here's what I did not do. I did not call my mother. I did not call the ship. I did not post anything, cry to anyone, or throw my phone at the flooring commercial. I asked for my laptop, and my neighbor Carmen, keeper of our spare key and asker of 0 questions, dropped it at the nurse's station the next morning. Derek texted me a heart and, "Glad you've got your projects, babe," slammed with meetings. The ship, I would learn, was docked in Cozumel that day. The meetings were a swim-up bar. I opened the laptop and did the thing I have done every January for 15 years. I started with what I could verify. Our joint accounts first. It took one evening with statements I had every legal right to read, because my name is on that account, and there it was. Patient as sediment. $28,400, moved out over 18 months in 11 transfers, each one memoed NMG Bridge. Bridge. Money walking out of my marriage into my father's company, authorized by my husband, one quiet plank at a time. The cruise charge sat on my personal card, the card Derek had been an authorized user on since our honeymoon, because that's what trust looks like when you're 29 and in love. $3,750, a shore excursion package, booked 6 days before departure, charged to the wife in the hospital bed. I did not delete him from the card that night, though my thumb hovered. Auditors don't spook the account before the count is done. Instead, I opened a fresh spreadsheet and named it the way I name all my files, plainly, household, actuals. Column A, what I'd been told. Column B, what the record said. It's the oldest report in my profession. It has ended more marriages than any detective. The second night, I went where I probably should have gone years earlier, the company's shared drive. Legally, boringly, with the login they'd given me 15 years ago and renewed every January. I was, after all, the family's numbers person. I wasn't hunting. I was preparing, the way you prepare before you confront your husband. Know what's true, know what's provable, know the difference. And there, sitting in the shared folder tree like it had every right to be there, was something new. A folder called Charters, Ray Only. Somebody. My father is not a details man. That was always my department. Had synced his private bookkeeping into the company drive by mistake. I looked at that folder name for a long time. Ray Only. Then I clicked, because my name had been signing this company's paperwork for 15 years, and whatever lived in there lived under my signature too. Inside was the charter fleet's real ledger. I knew the fake one intimately. I'd polished it every January. Cash receipts modest and tidy. A struggling side business kept afloat for love of the sea. The real one ran a second column the January version never saw. Cash charters, bachelor parties, fishing weekends, weddings at sunset. Hundreds of them. Years of them. None of them anywhere in anything I'd ever been handed. I sat in my hospital bed with my daughter's heartbeat galloping through the monitor's little speaker, scrolling 5 years of two truths. And I understood my Januaries at last. I hadn't been tidying my family's books. I'd been painting them. Every year they handed me a staged room, and I made it look lived in, and signed my name at the bottom like an artist. If you don't work in my field, here is the part where I tell you why my hands went cold, and it wasn't the betrayal. On 5 years of Newell Marine Group's returns, in the box where it says, Preparer, is my signature. Sara Newell, CPA. I prepared those filings in good faith from numbers my father's bookkeeper fed me, and good faith is a real defense, right up until the moment you learn the truth and keep quiet. After that, every silent week converts a victim into an accomplice, slowly, like interest. I know this because I called Priya Shah, a tax attorney I've known since a continuing ed seminar a decade ago, the kind of woman who answers the phone like she's already read the file. I talked for 11 minutes. She was quiet for maybe 30 seconds. Then she said, Sara, I need you to hear the order of events. Your marriage is a problem for later. Your name is a problem for now. You're on a set of railroad tracks, you're 8 months pregnant, and the train is called knowledge. We document when you learned what you learned, we correct what carries your signature, and depending on what's in that folder, there's a formal channel for the rest. What you don't get to do anymore is nothing. I hung up and looked at the whiteboard with my numbers in blue marker, and under the fetal monitors galloping, I heard the shape of the next month of my life. If you've ever done free work for family, and then found out what your love was actually being used for, tell me in the comments because I need to know how you carried it. Me, I did what I do. I made a file. And this time, the client was me. That Sunday night, Derek video called. Behind him, a plain wall, a lamp, the corner of what he'd angled to look like his office. He'd gotten a little sun, which he'd explain later as golf with the Tampa guys. He asked about my pressure, about the baby, called her our little line item, which used to make me laugh. And I watched my husband perform tiredness, the rubbed eyes, the loosened collar he'd loosened for the camera. And behind his voice, under the wall and the lamp, there was a low, steady hum I couldn't place at first, a hum with engines in it. Then, far away, unmistakable to anyone who grew up in a port city, a ship's horn. One long note. Derek didn't flinch. He'd stopped hearing it days ago. I didn't flinch either. "How's my girl?" he asked, and I put my hand on my belly, on his daughter, and I said, "We're fine." 2 words. The first lie I ever told my husband. And here is what shocked me, lying there in the dark after the call. It didn't feel like sin. It felt like armor, like the first accurate entry in a household that had been keeping 2 sets of faces for years. He blew a kiss to the camera lens. I watched myself blow one back. The woman on the little preview screen did it perfectly. She'd learned from watching the best. 5 more days, said the cruise itinerary I now had bookmarked. I slept better than I had all week. The family group chat that week was a masterclass. My mother posted a photo of a conference center lobby she must have found online. Beige carpet, a banner, could have been anywhere in the last 20 years, with the caption, "Day 2. Your father is charming everyone." Kayla complained about back-to-back sessions. Derek added a thumbs up to everything, the ellipsis of a man conserving his lies. And then, Wednesday evening, my mother slipped. A photo appeared. A sunset, impossibly orange, taken over a ship's rail. You could see the rail, you could see the wake. Captioned, "Gorgeous evening here." 40 seconds later, it vanished. Deleted. Replaced by nothing. I want to be honest about what I did with that, because it matters to how this story ends. I did not screenshot it. I didn't need to. Screenshots are for people building a case for an audience, and I wasn't building that kind of case. I reached for the yellow legal pad Rosa had scrounged me from the nurse's station, and I wrote, "Wed, 7:41 p.m. Sunset photo, ship's rail, deleted within the minute. A record, not a weapon." There's a difference, and I was starting to understand it was the difference I'd be living inside for the rest of my life. What that deleted photo actually cost me was something no screenshot could hold anyway. Until 7:41 that Wednesday, some root cellar part of me had believed this was Derek's sin. Singular. That my parents were props in it. Maybe even fooled by it. My mother deleted that photo in 40 seconds. You don't delete what you don't know is a lie. They all knew. The whole boat knew. I put down the pen, and Rosa came in for the night reading, and my numbers were up again, and nobody in that hospital asked me why. I spent the quiet days doing something dangerous for a woman on blood pressure watch. Remembering. 19. My first January. Dad cleared the dining table, set down a banker's box, and told me I was the only one he trusted with the real numbers. I stayed up 3 nights and found $1,100 in bank fees he could avoid, and he told the whole marina his daughter had the sharpest eyes in Florida, and I lived on that sentence for a year. 22. I skipped my only college spring break because audit season at the shop needed me. My roommates sent postcards. I reconciled fuel invoices. 24. The CFO chair. Promised across a Christmas ham. When we expand, sweetheart. The expansion came the following spring, 2 new slips and a party with an ice sculpture. The chair didn't. 29. My father stood at a dealer dinner, raised his glass at me in front of 30 men, and called me the company's secret weapon, and the table applauded. And I sat there glowing like a fool while the word secret did all the real work in that sentence. A weapon that's secret gets used, gets cleaned, and gets put back in the drawer. It does not get a title, a salary, or a seat. I knew. Lying in that hospital bed, I finally let myself total the column I'd been carrying forward for 15 years, and the balance was this. I had done a controller's job for a decade and a half, for free, for a company that flew my husband to Cozumel on my credit card while I grew their granddaughter in a monitored bed. My pressure held steady that day, actually. Rosa said sometimes the body calms down once the mind stops arguing with the evidence. Once you know a ledger is lying, the only mercy is that it can't stop. Numbers confess in patterns, and the patterns kept coming. In the real charter ledger, 5 years of cash receipts that had never seen a tax return, $940,000, give or take the weddings at sunset. In the payroll file, an employee I'd never met, a marketing assistant, salaried at $85,000 a year, with no email in the company system, no time cards, no photo at any company party I'd ever attended, and a direct deposit account whose last 4 digits I recognized because I'd helped my sister set up that account when she was 23. Kayla's assistant was Kayla, wearing a name like a coat. Fuel invoices with dates shuffled to move expenses between years. A consulting line that mapped, month by month, onto my parents' country club dues. I sat back against the hospital pillows and made myself say the true sentence out loud, quietly, to the fetal monitor. This was not a marriage problem. A husband on a boat. That's a marriage problem, and there are professionals for it. This was a federal problem wearing boat shoes. And my name, my clean, boring 20-year career name, was signed under 5 years of its cover story. My daughter kicked. Hard, like a co-signature. I know, I told her. I know. We're not staying. That was the first time I said it out loud, and I noticed I'd said we. Whatever came next. Attorneys. Filings. The end of Sunday dinners on the causeway. It was no longer a thing happening to me. It was a thing the two of us were leaving. My mother came to see me 2 days before the ship came home. She'd flown back early, from Nassau, the sailing's last port, though the story was that Tampa had wrapped up early. She didn't know I knew there was a ship at all. She brought peonies, my favorite, which felt like a receipt for something. She talked about Tampa for 4 full minutes, carpet and keynotes, and she is not a good liar in person. Her hands kept smoothing the blanket over my feet like she could iron the conversation flat. And then, in the middle of a sentence about the baby's nursery, she stopped and looked at the monitor with my daughter's heartbeat ticking across it, and something in her face gave way at the foundation line. "Your father," she said, and stopped. Started again. That trip. The Hendersons were on that sailing. The dealership money. The Naples people. Your father said we had to be seen there. Be seen, Sara. You know how he is about being seen. I said nothing. Rule 1 of an audit. When they start talking, stop helping. You know the story, she said, quieter. You don't know all of it. He was 12. It was a Tuesday. The truck. The finance company sent 2 men, and they took your grandfather's truck right in front of the school bus stop, chains and all, in front of every kid your father grew up with. He stood there holding his lunchbox. He told me once, one time, Sara, in 40 years, that the sound of those chains is the only thing he's ever been afraid of. She smoothed the blanket one more time. He swore he would never look poor again. He kept it. 50 years, he's kept it. She left before visiting hours ended. The peonies stayed, and their smell filled the room, and I lay there doing the terrible arithmetic of compassion. A 12-year-old with a lunchbox, chains in his ears, who grew up and bought boats, and spent everyone he loved to keep the noise out. Understanding a thing, it turns out, prices it. It doesn't pay for it. The next morning, I asked Rosa for a favor. She was updating my whiteboard, date, BP, baby's heart rate, all in her square blue capitals. And I asked her to add one line at the bottom. She looked at me. Nurses don't write extra things on medical whiteboards. The whiteboard is a legal document of sorts, and Rosa had been a nurse for 30 years and had, I suspect, written exactly 0 decorative lines in her career. "What's the line?" she asked. "The 14th, I said. "Just that. The 14th. She held my eyes for a moment. She'd taken my pressure the day of the noon news. She took it every day while I typed. She was, I am certain, the only person in Florida who had assembled the whole picture. And then she uncapped the marker and wrote it, square and blue, under my daughter's heart rate. The 14th. Nobody asked. Doctors read my vitals off that board every morning for a week and a half, with the date of a docking ship sitting under them like a footnote, and not one person said a word. but I saw it every time I opened my eyes. The 14th. The day the ship came home to Port Miami. The day the Tans walked back into their cover story. The day my husband would sit on the edge of my hospital bed smelling of duty-free cologne and tell me about Tampa. And I had a parallel clock now, because my doctor had started saying the word induction. Week 36. If the numbers held. Sooner, if they didn't. 2 arrivals coming, on 2 docks. One of them was mine. The whiteboard kept both of us honest. Heart rate on top. Judgment Day underneath. Rosa capped the marker and said the only thing she ever said about any of it that week. Boats come back. That's the thing about boats. On the 14th, at 6 in the evening, my husband came back from Tampa with a tan you cannot get in a conference center and a gift bag from the airport. Inside the bag, a box of coconut patties, the kind they sell at every cruise port souvenir shop from here to Cozumel, and I would know, because my firm audits a distributor. He kissed my forehead. He smelled like sunscreen at the follicle level, a smell that takes days of reapplication to achieve. He sat on the edge of my bed, took my hand, and told me about Tampa. And I did something I'm not proud of, and I'd do again. I asked one soft question, just to watch. Did the Henderson deal close? A flicker. The name was on the boat, not in Tampa. And then I got to witness a professional at work. He built it in real time. The Hendersons had sent their money guy instead. Tough negotiators, went long on day 2. Dad had to work the room. You know how your dad gets. Structure, texture, a setback for realism, a flattering role for himself. It balanced. It was beautiful. It was exactly like every fake ledger I've ever admired before breaking it apart, and watching him assemble it 8 inches from our daughter's heartbeat monitor, I finally understood my husband. Derek wasn't betraying the family code that trip. Derek was keeping it. He'd married into a firm where the product was appearance, and the invoice always went to someone off-screen, and he'd been promoted. And I was the someone. He ate one of the coconut patties himself, telling me about Tampa's terrible traffic. He'd bought his own alibi at the port and then eaten it. I watched him lick sugar off his thumb. This man I chose, and I felt the last soft thing in me file for its own divorce. I confronted him 2 days later, about the marriage only. The rest wasn't his to hear first. The rest had a lawyer now. I waited until he'd settled into the recliner with his phone, and I said, conversationally, "There's a charge on my card, $37.50. It says, cruise trip." The phone came down slowly, the way landing gear comes down, and I watched the stages I've watched in conference rooms my whole career. Stage 1. Confusion. Must be fraud. We should call the bank. The bank is terrible about this. Stage 2. When I didn't blink. Minimization. Okay. Look, it was the excursions package, the group thing. His card was maxed from the trip deposits. And here it came. The sentence he'd been issued. Your dad said to just put it on yours. It's a cash flow thing, Sara. Your family. Stage 3 is my favorite, professionally. Stage 3 is when they explain that the theft was actually belonging. He leaned forward, took my hand in both of his and said gently, like a man comforting a woman who's failed to understand something lovely, "Babe, I married into this family. Your family's money is our money. It all comes around. I married into this family, not you, not us." I heard the whole org chart in that sentence. My father at the top, the boats below him, then Derek, rising, and somewhere down in operations, unsalaried, me, the department that pays. He rubbed his thumb over my knuckles. The monitor galloped softly. "You look tired," he said, tender as anything. "You shouldn't stress about money stuff right now." And that was the moment the marriage ended. Not the news broadcast, not the horn on the video call. That thumb, that tenderness. A man soothing the account he was drawing down. My father called the next evening. Not to confess. Men like my father don't confess. They renegotiate. Derek had clearly reported the card conversation up the chain, because Dad opened with the voice he uses on buyers who've gotten cold feet. Warm, amused, a little disappointed in you. Your husband tells me you're upset about logistics. Logistics. $940,000 of unreported cash, a ghost on the payroll, my signature on 5 years of fiction, and a cruise on my card. Logistics. Talk to me, sweetheart. What do you want? You want the CFO title? Done. You want points? 15%? I'll have it drawn up. You're about to be a mother. Don't think like an accountant. I lay there with the phone against my ear, and I want to tell you exactly what happened inside me, because it's the hinge of this whole story. Nothing happened. That's the event. Nothing. The chair I had wanted since I was 19 years old floated past me on the phone line, real at last, offered at last. And it went by like a boat I wasn't on, and I felt the wake. And that was all. It had taken him 15 years to offer it and one threatened audit. That was the price tag he'd finally shown me, and it had never, not once, been denominated in love. Kayla texted while he was still talking. Don't do drama while you're pregnant, it's not good for the baby. My mother sent a red heart into the silence. Have you ever gotten the thing you wanted for 15 years? Handed to you as a bribe? Tell me in the comments, because my father was about to put that offer in writing, in leather, next to my daughter's bassinet. 2 days later, the drive access died. Kayla, the family's designated noticer of small things, had finally checked the access logs, seen my logins stacked up like gulls on a piling, and the folders went dark one by one. Shared drive, then payroll, then the charter files. Permissions revoked after 15 years the way you'd cancel a gym membership. They were too late in a way they couldn't imagine. Not because I'd raced them to a download, because of a habit older than any of this. I'm a preparer. Preparers keep copies of what they prepare and what they prepared it from. It's not paranoia, it's the profession. 15 Januaries of work papers, source summaries, and sign-offs sat in my own archive. Dated. Backed up. Boring. Mine. You can revoke a login. You can't revoke a filing cabinet. And that night my father called again, and the salesman was gone from his voice, and what was left was lower, older, colder. The voice, I imagine, that talks to him in his sleep in a language of chains. I want you to think very carefully, Sara. Your signature is on 5 years of this company's paperwork. Yours. Whatever you think you found it under your own name. This boat goes down, daughter. It goes down with all hands. We sink together. He waited. I watched my daughter's heartbeat tick across the monitor, steady as a metronome, borrowed courage at 140 beats a minute. He thought he was tying me to the mast. What he'd actually done, and only one of us knew it, was read me, out loud, the last reason I'd had for staying quiet. If my name was already on the boat, then silence wasn't safety. Silence was just going down slower. Good night, Dad, I said, and hung up and reached for the legal pad. Priya laid out the map on a video call the next morning, sharing her screen like a general who's already fought the battle in her head. 3 tracks in order. Track 1. You. We document the timeline of your knowledge. When you learned. From what? And what you did next. We amend everything that carries your signature. That's your good faith armor, and it only works if it's fast. Track 2. The company. What you've described has a formal channel. A disclosure to the IRS, filed through counsel. It's called a Form 211 when there's an award attached, and I want to set your expectations to 0. It takes years. It pays whistleblowers a percentage only if the government collects, and most people never see a dime. We're not filing it for the money. We're filing it because it is the single cleanest way on earth to put the truth somewhere your family can't charm it, bury it, or put it on your credit card. I laughed once, which surprised me. Track 3, she said, is the marriage, and that one's simple. The transfers, the card. That's financial infidelity with a paper trail, and family court has seen 1,000 of him. He'll be ordered to make it right, and he'll be shocked because men like Derek are always shocked when a ledger finally runs in both directions. She stopped sharing her screen and looked at me, 8 months pregnant in a hospital gown. The only thing you decide this week is nothing. You deliver a healthy baby. The paperwork will still be true after she's born. Truth keeps, Sara. It's the only thing in your family that does. My daughter had other plans for the schedule, which I respect. It runs in the family now. At 36 weeks and 1 day, my pressure spiked past arguing with, and the doctor said the word she'd been holding in reserve. Induction. It took 14 hours. Derek was there for the hallway parts, performing husband for the nurses' station, coffee runs, updates to the group chat. A man visibly bearing up. And I let him, because I had exactly one job that night, and it wasn't him. At 4:12 in the morning, Nora Newell arrived, 5 pounds 8 ounces, red-faced and furious about the change in accommodations, with a cry like a small cat who has seen your invoice and disputes it. They laid her on my chest, skin to skin, and the monitors quieted, and the room went away, and I met her. And I need to tell you what actually happened in that first hour, because everything after depends on it. I looked at my daughter, brand new, unsigned, not one entry in her yet, and I heard, clear as marker on a whiteboard, the lesson my family already had waiting for this girl. Be useful and be loved. Balance their books and call it belonging. Keep the January and lose the seat. Somewhere down the hall, my phone buzzed with red hearts from a woman who'd deleted a sunset, and I held Nora's whole spine in one hand, and a door inside me swung shut with no slam at all, just a click, like something finally reconciling. Not you, I told her out loud in the delivery room, while Derek was in the hallway telling someone we were all doing great. They're going to teach you that love is a job, not you. We're off that payroll. The nurse pretended not to hear. Rosa would have written it on the whiteboard. My father came on day 2, when they'd moved us to postpartum, room 412, bassinet by the window. He came correct. Blazer, no Marina cologne, a gift bag with a stuffed manatee bigger than the baby, and he held his granddaughter like a man who has held babies and been photographed doing it. For 1 minute. I'll give the minute to him. Free. He was just a grandfather. And his eyes did something unrehearsed, and I saw the 12-year-old with the lunchbox look out through them at all this pink new wealth. Then he set Nora down gently, sat in the visitor chair, and lifted his briefcase onto his knees, and took out a leather folder. And I watched the grandfather leave the room while the body stayed. I had this drawn up properly, he said, laying it on the rolling table next to the bassinet, next to my daughter, and turning it to face me. It was real. Chief Financial Officer, Newell Marine Group, 20% equity. A salary with a comma I'd never seen attached to my own name, effective the 1st of the quarter. My chair, at last, in writing, with my father's signature already on it, waiting above the blank line where mine would go. And there, in the recitals, dressed in the nicest suit language can wear. The executive will lead a comprehensive review and standardization of the company's financial records for the preceding 5 years. Standardization. 15 years I'd been their secret weapon for free. Now came the offer to do it for equity, with the burying built into the job description. Family is forever, sweetheart, my father said softly, patting the leather like a hull. This seat was always yours. I was saving it for when you were ready. He left it there, next to the bassinet, and told me to sleep on it. Derek, meanwhile, launched the apology. Flowers arrived daily. Peonies, which meant he'd asked my mother what I liked, which tells you everything about 5 years of marriage. His parents called from Ohio, warm, mortified, kind people who raised a salesman by accident, and on day 3 he sat by my bed at midnight, while Nora slept, and cried. Real tears. I want to be fair because this story doesn't need him to be a monster. It needs him to be exactly what he was. He said he'd gotten swept up. He said my father makes a world and you live in it before you notice you moved. He said, and this part I believed completely, that he hadn't thought of the card thing as stealing. Not once, not for a second. That's what made it hopeless. He cried, and I sat with my hand on his head like a benediction for the man I'd married, and some tired part of me reached for the exit marked maybe. And then morning came, and Priya sent one line, no greeting. Flag. Day of Nora's birth, $9,000 out of the joint account. Memo retainer. While I was in the 14th hour. while the nurses' station thought he was a rock. My husband had wept at my bed at midnight with his lawyer already funded from our grocery money, and both things were true at once. The tears and the transfer, because in the family he'd married into, both books are always true. You just never show them to the same person. I texted Priya back one word: proceed. Then I fed my daughter, and the maybe door closed with the same soft click as the other one. The temptation deserves its own beat, because I refuse to pretend I floated above it. 3 in the morning, 5 days in, the postpartum ward quiet as a bank vault, Nora asleep on my chest with her fists up like a tiny boxer. The leather folder sat on the rolling table where my father left it, catching the hallway light. And I did what I do. I ran both scenarios. 2 columns. The oldest report in my profession. Column A. Sign it. Nora grows up with a marina and a manatee and grandparents at every birthday. My mother gets to keep pretending, which is the only home she's ever lived in. I get the title, the comma, the seat, everything I wanted from age 19, and all it costs is doing what I have done every January for 15 years, except now with equity. That was the sentence that saved me. I heard it in my own accountant voice. What you have done every January for 15 years. Column A wasn't a new life. Column A was my old life with a salary. A lifetime appointment to the job of painting rooms and signing my name under other people's stories, renewed annually, forever, with my daughter watching. She'd learn it the way I did, not from lectures, but from Januaries. Column B. I press a button, and I lose the marina, the birthdays, the mother, the city, the chair. And Nora learns, from the only teacher whose books she'll ever fully audit, that her mother's name was not for sale. I looked down at her, 5 days old, breathing against my collarbone. The board doesn't need a meeting when the numbers are this clean. Rosa came up from antepartum on her break the night before my discharge. Nurses visit their alumni when the alumni are worth it. And she looked at Nora, the way experts look at good work. And then she saw the leather folder on the table, because Rosa sees everything, and she asked no questions about it, because Rosa asks nothing. She checked my chart out of pure habit, straightened my water pitcher and said, to the window more than to me, 30 years on that unit downstairs. You know what I hear from every bed? It'll be different when the baby comes. They'll change. A grandchild changes people. She turned the pitcher handle so I could reach it. Babies don't change people, mija. Babies reveal them. You've had a front row seat for the reveal for 5 weeks now. She headed for the door, and at the door she stopped, and delivered the only editorial of her entire career, still not looking at me. Whatever's in that fancy folder, you already know what it costs. You've been paying it since before I met you. The only question is whether the baby pays it too. Then she was gone, crepe soles down the hallway, and I sat there with my daughter and my father's leather folder and my laptop, and I opened the laptop, and I logged into the portal Priya had set up, where everything we had built for 3 weeks sat finished, reviewed, and waiting. Amended filings, the disclosure, the timeline of my knowledge, every page of it lacking exactly one thing, which was my authorization. I texted my father. Come by tomorrow at 4, I'll have your answer. Discharge was set for the following morning, which gave the whole thing a deadline, and deadlines are where my family and I finally speak the same language. I spent the day quietly building the room. Not for theater. I'd given up theater the day I watched my family perform Tampa from a boarding ramp, but because I have closed enough year ends to know that how you stage the signing matters. The leather folder, squared on the rolling table, my father's pen still clipped to it where he'd left it, confident as a flag. My laptop beside it, lit up, portal open, screen dimmed. Between them, the bassinet, with Nora wrapped like a burrito and working on her tiny opinions. 2 documents, 1 baby, 1 decision. The whole last 15 years of my life, arranged on a hospital rolling table with a scuffed wheel. Priya called at 3 to walk me through it one last time. You click. It files. Counsel of record is me. After that, no version of this family meeting changes anything legal. You'll be safe, documented, and done. Or, she said, careful, lawyerly, you don't click, and we talk about what track one looks like alone. Even now, she was leaving me the exit. That's how I knew I'd chosen the right attorney and the right column. Everyone kept handing me exits, and I kept not wanting them. At 4 o'clock exactly. My father has never once been late to a closing. There was a knock, 2 knuckles, brisk. Nora startled, then settled. Come in, Dad, I said, and the door opened on the last conversation of my old life. He went to the bassinet first. Of course he did. He's the best closer on the Gulf Coast, and the bassinet was the best thing in the room. He looked down at Nora for a long moment, and his face did the unrehearsed thing again, and I let it happen, because it was true, and because it was the last free minute I'd ever give him. She's got the Newell chin, he said. God help her. He sat, pulled the chair close and rested his hand on the leather folder like a captain resting a hand on a rail, and then he gave the speech. It was a good speech. I'd heard drafts of it my whole childhood. Family is a boat, he said. The water out there doesn't love you. Banks, government, strangers, weather. Everything out there wants a piece of the hull. But inside the boat, we're warm, we're dry, and we do not. His voice found its old iron. We do not ever leave the boat. Your grandfather lost his truck, he said quietly. I watched it dragged off on a chain in front of my whole school. Everything I've built since, every hour, every deal, every appearance. He tapped the folder. Was so nobody in this family would ever hear that sound. He turned the folder toward me, unclipped the pen, and set it down on the leather with the tiny click of a thing completing its journey. Sign it, sweetheart. Take your seat. Fix the past. It's just cleanup. You've done it your whole life. And everything goes back to what it was. All of it. Like none of this ever happened. And the terrible part. The part I'll be honest about forever. For 2 full seconds, that sentence sounded like rest. I didn't argue with the speech. You can't outclose a closer. Asymmetry was always the only strategy I had. Instead, I asked 3 questions, in my flattest month-end voice, the voice that has ended 100 beautiful presentations. First question: has this seat existed since I was 19, or since the night you found out what I'd read? He smiled the buyer's remorse smile, spread his hands. Sweetheart, does it matter? It's here now. Question 2. The marketing assistant. $85,000 a year. 5 years. Who cashes it? The smile held, but the eyes went to the bassinet, just for a flick, the tell of a man checking whether the witness was old enough to testify. Kayla works hard in ways you don't see, he said, which as an answer was an audit finding all by itself. Question 3, and I said it slowly, because I'd waited 15 years to ask a question he couldn't charm. If I sign this and standardize 5 years of records, when the numbers get questioned, and Dad, numbers always get questioned, whose name answers the door? Yours? Kayla's? Derek's? Silence. Or is that what the seat is for? And there it was. The thing under the leather, visible at last. The chair I'd wanted my whole adult life was a named position in front of a fire, a title, a comma, and a blast radius. My father looked at me for a long moment, and I watched him reprice me in real time, the way he reprices a buyer who's read the survey report. Then he went to the old reliable, the closer's last tool, soft as a hymn. Your signature's already on 5 years, Sara. We sink together, or we sail together. Same boat. Always was. I stood up, slowly, because 6 days after delivery you negotiate with your own body about everything, and I put one hand on the bassinet rail, and it wasn't for the drama. It was because I needed to hold the reason. 15 years, Dad, I said, and my voice came out the way I always hoped it would in this room. Level, unhurried, a report being read into the record. Since I was 19, every January, every audit season, every cleanup. You know what I finally understood, lying in this building while my card paid for the excursions package? He waited. Closers know when the room has to speak. You always wanted my numbers. You never wanted my name. My numbers stayed in the family, my name stayed off the door. That was the whole design. The weapon stays secret, or it stops being useful. I looked at the leather folder, the pen gleaming on it like bait on a hook. Everyone in this family was always at work. Tampa, the office, big quarter. You know what's funny, Dad? I was the only one in this family who was ever actually working. His jaw set. I turned the laptop toward him, and I brightened the screen, and I let him read it. The header of the disclosure, the amended filings queued behind it, his company's name, sitting in a government portal like a boat already on the chain. You taught us looking poor costs more than being poor, I said. We're finally going to find out which one actually costs more. And with my father watching, with my daughter 6 days old between us, I clicked, submit. The portal did what portals do. No thunder, no gavel. A gray button went briefly blue. A confirmation number appeared. 10 digits. And the truth about Newell Marine Group left the family, forever, at 4:19 on a Thursday afternoon. The quietest sound I've ever heard a life change to. My father didn't shout. I want you to know that, because I'd braced for the shout, and what came was worse and better at once. He looked at the screen until the confirmation number burned in, and then he closed the leather folder. Slowly, both hands, the way you close a casket lid. And he stood, and buttoned his blazer, and looked down at Nora one last time. You just orphaned yourself, daughter, he said, and his voice cracked exactly once, in the middle, where the salesman couldn't reach. In your own special way. No, Dad, I said, and it came out almost gentle, because it was almost gentle. I just stopped making payments. He walked out of room 412 without the folder. It sat there for an hour before an orderly asked if it was trash, and I said yes. And watch what you say to tired women. Because I meant it. That evening, in the same chair with Nora asleep in the crook of my left arm, I signed the other set of papers on that rolling table. The divorce petition Priya had drafted. My name, the date, done. 2 signatures in one afternoon. One to the government, one to the court. And both of them said the same thing in different fonts. My name, my life, my ledger now. That night, after the ward went quiet, I posted the only public statement I have ever made or will ever make about any of it. No thread, no video, no crying selfie, none of the currency my family traffics in. 4 sentences, comments off. Derek and I are divorcing. As of this month, I have no financial connection to Newell Marine Group. All records I ever prepared for that company are being corrected with the appropriate authorities. That's all I'll ever say about it. Then I turned the phone face down on the blanket and fed my daughter in the dark, listening to the rain come in off the bay and tick against the window of room 412. The post did what truth does when you don't perform it. It moved slowly, and it could not be argued with. There was nothing to screenshot out of context, no adjective to quote back, no wound to reopen on camera. Just 4 flat facts, sitting in the town square with their hands folded, while every marina in Miami filled in the rest by itself. My phone lit up face down on the blanket, on and off, all night, like distant lightning. Kayla, cousins, numbers I didn't know. One from my mother at 2 in the morning that I didn't read until morning, and when I read it, it said only, I understand. It's the closest thing to a confession anyone in my family ever sent me. I never answered it. I did keep it. Here's the accounting, because you've stayed with me this long, and you deserve the actuals. The audit took 14 months, and it was exactly as boring as justice usually is. Letters, records requests, conference calls I wasn't on and didn't want to be on. Newell Marine Group was assessed $1.3 million in back taxes, penalties, and interest. The fleet was sold at auction. I'm told the Hendersons bought 2 of the boats, which has a poetry I decline to enjoy. The company dissolved. The Coral Gables house grew a realtor's sign, and my parents moved to a 2-bedroom condo near the causeway, close enough to the water that my father can still smell the life he staged. He tells people at the marina that his daughter stabbed the family. Fewer people every year find that story load-bearing because the public record is public. And records, unlike stories, don't need anyone to believe them. Kayla got a job with a time clock. I'm told she's good at it. I hope that's true in a way I don't fully have room for yet. Derek. The divorce decree ordered him to repay the card charge and half of everything he'd moved, $3750 plus $18,700, and he was, as Priya predicted, genuinely shocked that ledgers run in both directions. He sees Nora twice a year, and both times so far he was between opportunities, tanned, warm, wonderful with her for 90 minutes. Some men are excursions, not voyages. My mother sends birthday cards to a P.O. box I set up for exactly this purpose, a small door, with conditions, and so far she has honored them, which is its own quiet astonishment. And me, a forensic accounting firm in Seattle that had sat across from me on a case years ago called The Month My Post Went Up. Turns out 4 flat sentences are a resume in my field. 2 years later, I hung out my own sign. I got to stand on the sidewalk on a gray Northwest morning, coffee in one hand, Nora's stroller handle in the other, and watch a man in overalls press gold lettering onto glass, Newell Forensic Accounting. My numbers, and my name, finally on the same door. The whistleblower claim is still out there somewhere in the federal machinery. Priya says years, maybe never. If it ever arrives, it goes straight to Nora's college fund, and if it never does, it changes nothing, because I didn't file it for the money. Some ledgers you correct for the record. On Saturdays, we walk to Green Lake and Nora counts the ducks. She counts them wrong. I don't correct her. I spent 15 years believing that if I balanced their books carefully enough, love would eventually balance too. But love was never a ledger you can earn your way into. It's a name on a door, and the only door that ever owed me my name was the one I finally built myself. That's my story. One news report, one click, and a name that finally landed on the right door. If you're the one who keeps the family running while somebody else takes the cruise, let this be your sign to check where your name is, and where it isn't. Share this with the person who does the quiet work in your family. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in room 412. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.